Mr. Wyant, thanks for joining me today.
Well, thanks very much for having me.
You've said you are committed to a compassionate government, a more compassionate government. How would you say the government isn't demonstrating compassion right now?
Well, I think, one of the things that we've been going around the province talking about is a return to our founding principles. We believe in smaller, less intrusive government, but we also have a social responsibility as government. And I think one of the things we're going around talking to people about is reminding people that I think that the core business of government is really people. And we're talking about the economy as our currency. That's what we need to drive. We need to drive our economy to continue to provide the resources into government so that we can take care of our primary responsibility, and that's the people of the province. And so that's what we're going around talking about, making sure that we can properly fund education and health care and some of the other issues that people have said as we're going around the province talking to that are important to them. So that's really our primary message.
But what is not happening right now that you want to change if you were the leader of the Saskatchewan Party?
Well, I think that there's a sense among some people in this province that the government isn't quite listening quite as much as perhaps they once were. And I think maybe after 10 years the government becomes a little bit insular and isn't listening to the kinds of things that people are talking about in terms of quality education and health care and those kinds of things. And so remembering our principles in terms of being fiscal conservatives, because we're all fiscal conservatives, making sure that we're providing those resources. And so that's really kind of the things that we're hearing, that there are a lot of people that had traditionally supported our party that perhaps don't feel quite as warm in our party as they once felt. And so it's really a message trying to reattract those people to our party and give them some hope in their government as we go forward.
Let's talk about the budget and this 3.5% cut for the labor force in the public sector, rather. And if unions disagree with this, how do you plan to account for that?
Well, I believe in the collective bargaining process, and if you read some of the articles that have been in the paper today, talking about the gap between what the unions are expecting their government to come up with and what the government's plans are. But this is all part of the collective bargaining process. I think that we'll move forward with that collective bargaining process. We'll bargain in good faith, and I'm sure that we'll be able to come to an arrangement. But the expectation that we can balance our budget. But at the same time making sure that the people that work for this government, the people that support our children in our classrooms and support health care in this province are properly taken care of. So that's really the goal of collective bargaining, and I'm committed to that collective bargaining process.
What would you like to see change in education and in the classrooms? There's a lot of frustration that education and teachers aren't getting the support that they need to give our young people of today the best education they need going forward.
Well, we've been talking a lot about education, and part of my policy that I had brought out just a couple of weeks ago on education. I've said whenever I get the opportunity that not a wheel turns in this province unless you have a good quality education system, and whether that's K to 12 or post-secondary. I think we need to make sure that we're providing resources to the classrooms that the teachers need to be able to provide the educational opportunities to children in their classrooms. And I think we do a disservice when we don't do that. We've had an educational sector plan that was put together by a lot of stakeholders, teachers and school board trustees and administrators and the ministry. We need to make sure that we're properly resourcing that sector plan, and I've committed to, first of all, a review of the sector plan after I become Premier, if I'm fortunate enough to get that done, and then look to see what additional resources we're going to need to dedicate so that we can be true to that plan and make sure it's successful. Because really, ensuring that we provide good quality education is the key to making sure that we have a successful society and successful communities.
How are you different than Brad Wall?
Well, there's a lot of things that in terms of Brad's philosophy that I agree with. I think that there's a lot of things that we need to continue on. I think what we need to do is refocus on the founding principles of this party, making sure we're true to those founding principles, because that's what's given us the electoral success over the last 3 general elections. So while there's a number of things that I fully support in terms of where this party has come from and look to build on the significant economic success of this province, I do think that we need to refocus a little bit on what we need to do to make sure that we're supporting the people of this province. And so from that perspective, I want to make sure that we focus on and we make sure that people in this province understand that government's first responsibility is to the people of this province, and use the economy to do that, to make sure we're providing those resources.
Would you say that hasn't been done?
Well, I think that there's been a sense that perhaps we've spent more time focusing on balancing the budget, which is important. We need to live within our means, and we need to make sure that we balance our budgets. I think that that's important in households, it's important in businesses, and I think government, that should be expected from people's government. But I think that in terms of trying to focus on balancing the budget, we can't lose sight of what our core responsibilities are as a government.
Thanks for your time today, Mr. Wyant.
Thanks very much.